Shalom, beloved family. It's your girl Sophia Spiritualite, and we're here with another lesson slash celestial angelic reading. So, as I mentioned on the Zoom call, and I was talking about in the live yesterday um, with the brother Big Levi, um, there's a lot of stuff that we just don't even understand, and I don't even really know how to explain this, but there's a particular point placement of on our charts called the part of fortune. That's a generic one that, you know, basically a lot of the older astrology books make reference to. And so when I first started doing people's charts, I excluded it because I didn't understand what it was, why it was there, whatever, what exactly is the point of this thing. And since nobody else used it, no astrologer I knew, I had looked at their videos or even spoken to, they did not use the part of fortune. So I just, skipped it. And then something said it's the part of fortune. I said, well, wait a minute. Now, if it's the part of fortune, don't you want to know what your fortunate part is? Um, what I mean, how is that something that you don't want to know? Um, and so um I started including it in my charts, like, look, we're just gonna throw this in here and we're gonna see what happens. So, but it bothered me because I still didn't understand you know what the point was, what was the purpose. And then when I started doing the celestial angelic readings, it 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 just came to me that, okay, so if every degree in your chart is assigned an angel, that means your fortunate part, that's an angel that's good for you. That's where you're going to have all the time. You're just going to have good luck, and if you can get into that fortunate part in whatever you're doing, then that can be something that will automatically work for you. So there's some people, and of course, review my Kanye West chart reading, and you'll understand a little bit about what I'm saying. It's like whenever for him, whenever he gets into this particular vein of this angel, he's able to be successful. It's going to work out for him. And so we have that part in our chart. But before you go and look it up, let's just talk a little bit about it because there's a lot of information out there. And then I'll do the reading for mine, and I'll give you some insight, how another way that Elder Elman's sigil ties into this, and it's going to be pretty shocking. But we'll get to that a little bit later. So, first of all, let's start out in let's start out with a few websites, and then I have a book we're going to refer to, and then I'll do the reading. So hopefully this won't take too long. So this is just Cafe Astrology. In astrology, the part of fortune, sometimes called fortuna, is the most popular Arabic part. Arabic parts are sensitive points in a chart and are calculated using specific formulas whereby two planets or points are added together and a third planet or point is subtracted from that result. So your part of fortune, if you were born in the day, is your ascendant plus your moon minus your sun. And if you were born at night, is your ascendant plus your sun minus your moon. So note that a chart is considered a day chart. I just told you about that. What the part of fortune means. The part of fortune represents worldly success and is associated with the physical body and health as well. It can be indicative of career or vocation. The condition and placement of the ruling planet of the part of fortune, that is, the natural ruler of the sign where the part of fortune is placed, are important to factor into the interpretation of this Arabic part. Worldly success and prosperity are both associated with the part of fortune. Both its sign and its house placement suggest innate abilities and talents, areas of life and qualities that are expressed naturally. The part of fortune lies some distance in longitude from the ascendants as the moon lies from the sun. For if, for example, the sun is conjunct with the moon in a natal chart, the part of fortune will lie close to the ascendant. Similarly, if the sun and moon are opposition in a natal chart, the part of fortune will lie close to the descendant, opposite of the ascendant. Which basically means at the start of house 7, the ascendant is the start of house 1, the ascendant is the start of house 1, the descendant is the start of house 7. All right. It is interesting to note that the Arabic part is the that Arabic part, the part of spirit. Did you know you had a part of spirit? Is calculated in an opposite manner and also symbolizes the reverse or opposite theme of the spiritual well-being. And here it has a calculator. But before we get to that, let's look a little bit into this. Oh, actually, let's run to the book real quick. So this is gonna blow your mind. So this is a book. It's called Whole Sign Houses, the oldest house system, free 99 on archive. Okay. Actually, before I do that, let me open up. All right. So um, let's do this one. So let's read this a little bit. We're going to start with this first whole paragraph. Let's suppose that the problem is really a false problem, that it was never intention of the earliest astrologers to create a second 12-fold system of division to add that of the sign. Suppose instead that the interpretive functions of the 12 places were taken on by the signs according to their relationship with the rising sign or any other sign containing a horoscopic point. The problem of relating the ascendant and midheaven, and your midheaven is your 10th house. Again, the 10th house is the house of the is the father's house. It's the most high. And so anyway, I'm not going to get into that. We do know, for example, that places were computed from the ascendant, the lot of fortune. Wait, and here they call it the lot of fortune. Now, why would they call it the lot of fortune here and everywhere else is called the part of fortune? Let's continue on. The lot of the father. Hold on. Did you know you had a lot of the father? For information about the father, the lot of the mother for information about the mother, and from other lots. Wait a second. Did you know there were more lots? As well as from which it would be plausible to compute places by sign, and even those lots where it would not be plausible to compute places. The lot was supposed to designate an entire sign as a source of something in particular. For example, there was a lot of inseparable illness, chronic illness. Did you know there's a lot of chronic illness? And the formula was a lot equals the ascendant plus um, Mars minus Saturn by day, and a lot and ascendant plus Saturn minus Mars by night. The sign fell into what was supposed to signify the source of the worst kinds of illness. In Valence, it was called the lot of accusation. Really? There's a lot of accusation because it was supposed to signify that of which one was accused, whether falsely or truthfully. Um, Now let's read. I have another. Here's a discussion of all of the different lots. Not all of them, because as we're going to find out, there's way more lots than we even imagine. So we're going to start with this first full paragraph. One of the most, and so basically, let me summarize what he's talking about in this book. What he's talking about in this book as a whole house system is basically means that instead of having your chart ruled by mainly, okay, so for example, in a standard chart, the first house is Aries, right? And so Aries is ruled by Mars. And so what it is in in the tropical system, which is what basically everyone uses, if you have planets in that first house, then those planets have influence by Mars. And they're influenced also by the sign that they're in, but the primary influence is going to be that Aries or Mars energy. In the whole house system, it's influenced by whatever sign is in that house. So, for example, my first house contains Scorpio, so instead of saying my first house is has Aries energy, it you would say that it has Scorpio energy. And so that's what they are describing. The whole house system is whatever signs are in that house, that's the signs. And and not this system of the energy coming from Mars and so on and so forth. And the whole thing about that is each of them have their significance and their um it depends on what you're trying to figure out, whether whether you're going to look at the energy from Mars being more significant, or if you're going to look at the energy from whatever the sign is being more significant. um okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So, one of the most startling implications concerning whole sign houses is the use of what I call lot charts. These are charts which a lot or part serves as the horoscopic point, that is, the point that establishes one of the signs as being the sign that occupies the first place, or the house, as we would call it. This teaching is quite thoroughly worked out in connection with the chart based on the lot of fortune. This appears at its most developed in the Manilius, where it was called the Circle of Alta. Um, anyway, that's interesting. However, the meanings of the places established by the lot of fortune in this system are quite different from those in conventional places or houses. In the Vetus Valens, however, the meaning of the places from the lot of fortune are pretty much what one would expect, aside from the fact that these places are derived from the lot of fortune rather than the ascendant. The only problem is that there's no systemic listing of the significations of those places. Only some of them are described in detail. The 11th place from the lot of fortune, described as a place of acquisition, that is, it shows something about how one acquires wealth and possessions. This is consistent with the fact that the 11th place in Greek astrology in general, as well as Hindu astrology, is a place where one gains wealth. Okay, so he's talking about actually looking at the actual chart, like the actual circle. The 10th place from the lot of fortune is a secondary midheaven, describing more about one does for a living or calling. It is not stated very clearly, but the implication is very strong that one could do something similar with the lot of spirit, as well as other lots. Unfortunately, again, there are no worked out examples. Much in ancient astrological texts seems to have been left as an exercise to be worked out by the student. And I strongly believe that this is literally the case. According to this guy, some other guy, and some others, um, a lot of fortune has to do with acquiring money and other possessions with reputation, career, and social status, especially those that are determined by one's family status and with one's body type, along with his ascendant. As one can see, the lot of fortune is very lunar in its indications. The lot of spirit, according to the same sources, has to do with intentional actions, especially one's career, insofar as it is determined by a conspicuous choice. The lot of spirit is solar. So they even have them backwards. Like they call the lot of spirit the lot of the mother, but really the lot of spirit is a lot of the father, and the lot of fortune is a lot of the mother, because it's the solar is influenced by the father, and the lunar is influenced by the mother. So all kinds of hijacks in this thing. All right, has to do with the intentional actions. Especially in one's career. Okay, the lot of spirit is solar. In fact, the lots of fortune and spirit are among lots specifically related to the planets, fortune being related to the moon, and spirit being related to the sun. It is beyond the scope of the article to go into great depth, but it is clear from careful reading of the Greek literature that lot of fortune and its associated chart describes one tendencies in early life, while the lot of spirit and its presumed association chart have to do with later life and one's maturity. The basis chart from the ascendant seems to be the native's life as a whole. I could and will say much more about these charts in other writings, but that has to be left to another time. Okay, so basically that's all he's going to say in this. So let's go to this article right here. And this is an experiment in the use of parts. So This says the loss of the parts. Our natural reaction is to say that they were abandoned because they did not work, but that is not necessarily the case. Progress in science is neither continuous nor inevitable. We are all familiar with the loss of knowledge after the fall of Roman Empire, but it does not need hairy sword-waving barbarians to produce a dark age. Religious fundamentalism, Christianity, Catholicism, okay, largely destroyed learning the Arab world in the later ages, and irreligious fundamentalism almost extinguished astrology in the 18th century Europe. Few people realize that serious damage was also done in the 16th century. The Renaissance is normally seen as a time of progress, which it was, but not without laws. The preoccupation with classical scholarship and reaction against everything medieval had a harrowing effect, especially where the latter sentiment was reinforced by the Reformation. So, what he's saying there is that we had a quote unquote Renaissance, but then they took all the old stuff, all of our stuff, and said that it was trash and trashed it instead of integrating it into the new stuff. And this is a similar problem that I have with the Harlem Renaissance because they trash all of our old traditions. And I know people can have whatever you know, view of the Harlem Renaissance they want. Me me personally having done extensive research, I do not think that it was in the interest of our people, that Harlem Renaissance, except for a few authors like Zora Neale Hurston. That would be like the only one. Everything else was, to me, in my opinion, the start of the hidden not the start, but the continuation of the hidden black eye, because again, these people were doing all kinds of stuff in secret and then telling the people in public not to do it. So that was a huge, that's a huge problem I have in particular. So I'll continue on with the Harlem Renaissance, which one day we will get into American Black or American Atlantean history as far as the 1900s are concerned, because it needs to be taught in a different way in the light of these angels and stuff. So anyway, the spirit of the age led many astrologers to attempt a renaissance and reformation in astrology, a return to pre-medieval practice, which they took to be preserved in Ptolemy. But these would-be reformers were mistaken, for the medieval Arabs were actually far closer to Ptolemy than the mainstream Greek practice. Others, like Cardan, Morin, Kepler, attempted to recreate astrology as theories than facts. I mean, as Galileo had recreated physics. Sorry, their fault was to have more theories and facts. All this had implications for the use of parts. The would-be physicists tended to reject the parts on the grounds that there's nothing there. What did they imagine occupied the place of the midheaven? The Ptolemaic school dismissed all parts rather than the part of fortune as Arabic, a misnomer which is still current. As the part of fortune itself, that which, as we shall see shortly, was wrongly calculated and in consequence became gradually abandoned. Okay, the validity of the parts. Lord have mercy. The usual method for finding the part of fortune today is given by Ptolemy, a measure from the sun to the moon, and then add that arc to the ascendant. The original practice confined this method to diurnal charts. At night, the arc was measured from the moon to the sun. Of all surviving Greek texts, only one agrees with Ptolemy, a single chart cast by an anonymous astrologer a generation before him. With very few exceptions, medieval astrologers also made the distinction between nocturnal and diurnal methods, and it survived down to the 18th century. Can we decide who's right? History would seem to provide a verdict. Ptolemy's method only caught on 15 centuries after it was introduced as a result of a non-astrological considerations to largely be abandoned after only a few centuries. Nevertheless, I've tried to investigate the matter experimentally, collecting evidence to show whether the parts are valid, and if so, whether they should be calculated differently by day and by night. It's not as easy as one might think. Looking through collections of nativities, one finds many charts are not precise enough for us to be sure of the aspects or even the sign of the necessary part. In my investigation, I used 5 parts: fortune, spirit, sickness, father, and mother, and And for each case, I calculated an appropriate part by the traditional formula and a false part by the reversing formula. I then considered both points to see whether their placing in a chart was appropriate. If the parts were meaningless, both true and false parts would have no more value than any randomly chosen point. They would be equally effective and ineffective. If the parts were valid, the correctly calculated part will always be suitable, and the wrongly calculated part would either be suitable or unsuitable at random. In that case, the correct part would be more appropriate or at least as good as the false one, but never worse. The latter was the result which I obtained, validating both parts tested and the method of calculation. Okay, so here he has the nature of the parts. So, what are the parts? The part of fortune, and look at that symbol. Y'all should already know what that symbol made me think of. I was like, oh crap, I know that symbol. We're going to talk about that in a second. Is a means of evaluating the relationship of the lights in their house positions. The formula by day is the ascendant plus the moon minus the sun. But why is the method reversed at night? And is that always the case? In traditional astrology, the difference between diurnal and nocturnal charts is considered fundamental and it affects many considerations. Thus, the planets are divided on the basis on two sects. Diurnal is Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury as a morning star, and Moon, Mars, Venus, and Mercury as the evening star. This means that the sun predominates in diurnal charts, whereas the moon predominates in nocturnal ones. In the first case, we measure the arc for the part of fortune from the sun, and the second from the moon. But the reverse method does have a significance, but as a part whose existence explains why the Ptolemaic method sometimes seems to work. And of course, these people not considering the angels over that at all whatsoever, meaning, in my opinion, you could use whichever way they calculate it, you can connect yourself with that angel, right? Okay. So here we go. Here's the part of spirit. And this should also to give y'all y'all should already know where I'm going with this. And that's the ascendant plus the sun minus the moon. And again, basically what they're saying is your basically what they're saying is you're both your part of spirit and your part of fortune are useful, but if you were born in the morning, then your part of spirit is if you're born at night, let me see. If you're born under this if you're born in the morning or during the daytime, the part of spirit is this is accurate, the part of spirit and the ascendant. But if you're born I mean in the part of fortune, but if you're born at night, it's reversed, meaning your part of fortune is really your part of spirit and your part of spirit is really your part of fortune. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Um, the part of spirit is the reverse of the part of fortune, and it um in meaning as well as method, spiritual well-being as opposed to worldly success. Okay, so we're not going to read all of this, but I did click on that other link, and we're about to get some really good information here. So let's see if we can find someone. Let's look at here at Marilyn Monroe. Everybody, a lot of people should be familiar with her. Another example of contrast between the parts of fortune and the spirit is found in Nativity of Marilyn Monroe. The part of fortune is sextile to the moon in conjunction with Venus and trine to Neptune. This shows her success, founded on ability to project an almost mythical femininity, not because of the relation to Venus and Neptune, okay? Not unexpectedly, in view of her tragic life, the part of spirit is much less favorably placed, being in opposition to the sun. The sun, both light and sect of the ruler of the ascendant by a sign of triplicity, is perigee and at the Uranus Neptune midpoint and has its peregrine Saturn as his first triplicity ruler. On the other hand, he is in conjunction with Mercury, his dispositor and the illuminatin of the chart. And Saturn is at least angular. Okay, this is going into okay. The parts of fortune and spirit clearly help to show where good and bad features will manifest. A majority factor in Monroe's life was the separation from her mother due to the latter's insanity. The problems of her mother are indicated by the afflicted moon, Mars square Mars opposition Neptune, and the weak midheaven ruled by Venus, Perigee in her detriment. The impact is made clear by placing the part of the mother in opposition to the part of the spirit. So what they're saying is clearly all of these things manifested in her chart. Basically, I'm not going to go into all the detail because let's look and see what it says about Prince Charles. Here we go. The value of the parts clarifying and interpretation is shown by the nativity of the Prince of Wales. The indications for the seventh house are mixed. The cusp squared by the moon, but its ruler Saturn is a part of the grand trine and its triplicity. Venus is dignified and sextile to Mars, but the conjunction with Neptune could cause problems. If we consider the part of marriage at 16 degrees Virgo, we see that the case is worse than it first appears. That part is ruled by Mercury, the one peregrine planet in the chart, and it falls on the Venus Pluto midpoint. What they're saying is you have an um goodness gracious, you have this thing with Venus with Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, and it is opposite to the Venus Pluto midpoint, which basically knowledge and love are kind of like on opposite ends. You never see, okay, so like in my chart, like I have all knowledge and no love. There's literally almost no love in my chart at all. Like nothing, no emotional stuff. There's no emotional stuff in my chart at all. My emotional part is literally my son. Like that is my emotional part. I have no emotional parts in my chart. My girls are not emotional parts for me. My emotional part is literally my son. So that is how it comes up in my chart. So for him, that's going to be bad news because it's always going to be a big fight between the emotional part and the literal part. So okay, let's look at the next website here. Oh, not this one. This is actually I'm going to put this link in the bio. This will you will use to calculate your lot of fortune, your lot of spirit, and your lot of arrows. However, we're going to talk about some more things before we even get to that. Here we go. This is from 2016, y'all. So this is another, I would like to point this out as far the date is concerned because this is another way you know that this stuff was forced to be released unto us. And so this information came out, published on this Astrologian website, and then after shortly after this, you know, Elder Elman got the sigil. And so these things are not unrelated. All right. The Arabian points or lots are a collection of fictional points calculated to midpoint special events such as marriage, death, or fame. They were commonly employed by the Greeks, but their origins are believed to date even earlier to the Babylonians, which you know that means it was our stuff, okay? Most points are computed by adding the ascendant degree to the distance between two given planetary degrees. The part of fortune and the lot of spirit are the most popular points used. However, some of the other parts, such as the part of death, the part of catastrophe, are avoided due to the upsetting neuroticism they may cause. These lots are useful in electional astrology and identifying auspicious windows of opportunity for various events. After the fall of the Roman Empire, much of the ideas practiced by the Greeks were translated and utilized by the Abbasid Arabs. And I would like to point out, now that I'm thinking about it, the whole card system also allegedly comes from the Arabs. So again, more of our stuff. There are more than 55 lots. Whoa, hold up. Did you hear that? Rewind the tape. There are more than 55 lots, and it's not certain how many are from the antiquities and how many are contributions by the Arabs. You know they didn't come up with none of this stuff. It seems that the Arabs took an enthusiastic interest in the lots and may have expanded on them substantially. What I noticed though is there are multiple lots for essentially the same thing, according to you. For instance, there's a lot for death, there's a lot for tragedy, assassination, suicide, catastrophe, and destruction. That's because they don't understand the angels. Like they just totally leave the angels out. This would make perfect sense if you added the angels in. It seems that having multiple versions serves to increase the odds of finding a lot point. That's dodge that hijack. Okay, I found that Bruce Lee's lot of death matched up perfectly with his actual death date. In Brandon Lee's chart, it was not accurate at all. I didn't try any of the alternatives like the lot of assassination or the lot of tragedy, but I bet one of them would hit the mark. So basically, there's an angel over all of this stuff. Why astrologers don't embrace the angels is beyond my understanding. So, okay, well, I'm not going to read that part. So look at this. I'm not going to read all of these. So if you want to know what your lot of ability, okay, so they have a calculator. I'm also going to give you guys a link to that. So if you want to know what your lot of ability is, that's your ascendant plus Mars minus the ruler of the ascendant. If you want to know what your um ancestors relations, the angel that can help you with that, that's your ascendant plus Mars minus Saturn, or ascendant plus Mars, Saturn minus Mars in PM charts. If you want to know what your lot of bad luck is, your ascendant plus your part of fortune minus your part of spirit. I mean, you're a controversy. Now, with this information, we can line stuff up pretty directly. I mean, somebody said, look, your lot of fate or karma, ascendant plus Saturn minus the sun. Of course, your lot of the father, your lot of your grandparents, you know what I mean? Like, oh, father, this just, I mean, the lot of homosexuality. Why they have a lot of homosexuality? I mean, this is a lot of real estate, a lot of secret enemies, you know, this is crazy. Lot of victory. What's your lot of victory? Ascendant plus Jupiter minus part of spirit. I mean, lot of surgery. Hello. Okay, look at this. Now, this is a good. They have two lots of suicide. Why is that? What did I tell you? There are two angels over suicide. The first angel that's over suicide is the one that tells you not to do something. The second angel that's over suicide will hold you in purgatory essentially until your time is up that you were supposed to serve on this planet. That's a confirmation that the information that we have, a lot of sons, I mean, sons and laws. I mean, this is anyway, this is shocking and unbelievable at the same time. And so this is, I mean, so much lot of destiny, you know what I mean? Like my daughter's name is Destiny. So this is just a lot of beauty. Wouldn't you like to know who's over your beauty? So you can connect with that lot of astrology. Who's teaching you astrology? You can find that out. You know, it's stuff you can do with that information. There's anyway. All right, so is this the last one I have? All right, so let's go over to now that you all have seen that, let's take a look at some scriptures. So once I realized the term was lots, that immediately made me think, okay, where is lots used in the Bible? Because I remember them talking about lots, and it seemed not Lot the person, but casting of lots. Now, if they have 55 lots that was just listed right there, what do you think casting of lots is? Because before they tried to make it sound like it was rolling of dice or something like that. But given being that there's 55 lots here, this is 55 different ones. Lot of fortune, lot of this, lot of that, lot of action, lot of all of this stuff. There's 55 different lots right here, okay? Now, let's look how this using the Bible. Let's just read a couple of them. Leviticus 16 verse 8. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the two goats, one for the lot of the Lord and one for the lot of the scapegoat. I mean, I don't that's pretty direct. You can look at the part of fortune for each one and see which one was for the father and which one is for the scapegoat. You know? First Chronicles 26:14. And the lot of eastward fell to Shelemiah, and for Zechariah's son, a wise counselor, they cast lots, and his lot came out northward. Okay, so they cast lots. Okay. Acts 1:26, and they gave forth their lots, and the lot fell upon Matthias, and he was numbered with the 11 apostles. Okay, here we go, another casting of lots. And it said, everyone to his fellow, come, let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. This is probably what I was thinking of, because I was just talking about Jonah, thinking about Jonah the other day with the whole whale situation, the Leviathan that swallowed him up. And this is in the whole going to Nineveh. I was actually thinking about his journey to Nineveh and how he ended up there. But this whole thing, they cast lots. What they do, they looked at the charts. See, they try and make the scene. See, remember, I don't know if y'all remember from my Magi astrology lesson, but that book said that astrology was the most studied subject of the Abraham's children. Everybody, all of Abraham's children knew astrology. They sat and talked astrology. They did nothing but talk astrology. Now, if you've got 55 different parts to discuss, you can't always be talking astrology. You can be talking about how it was cast. You can recast it. You can look at it and say, is this right? You could be saying, oh no, I cast mine like this. And look, you can look at when people died. You can look at their lots and all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's no end to the discussion when you got 55 parts of lots of fortune to discuss. But if they just make you think it's these 12 planets and that's it, these 12 points where the planets in the sky and that's it, then it doesn't seem like there's a lot to discuss. So the whole thing about that is, this is why you have to keep asking the questions. All right, that's about Lot. Let's see. Those are all about Lot. Um, um, Here we go. 1 Samuel 14, verse 42. And Saul said, cast lots between me and Jonathan, my son. And Jonathan was taken. Why? They looked at the charts and they looked at the different points and said, who they have 55 points. One of those points is going to correlate with your question. This also reinforces my theory that the Urim and the Thummim was astrology and tarot. Because between looking at somebody's astrology chart with all these parts of fortune and asking the cards for a little bit of clarification, you can answer any question. There's no questions you can't answer. So the higher Urim and the higher Thummim would be incorporating these lots into our discussion of astrology. Now, there's no way I'm going to do somebody's chart and put all of these lots in there. That's a little bit out of control. But there's some that are important, and for your own use, once you figure out how to use the calculator, you can look this stuff up for yourself. Gentiles gonna have to pay. I don't know what the price is going to be for a lot reading because there's 55 points. I mean, that's just anyway. Um, let's keep going. Let's look at Psalm 16, verse 5 at the bottom here. The Lord is the portion of mine inheritance and of my cup. Thou maintainest my lot. Thou maintainest my part of fortune. Thou maintainest my lots, my fortunate parts. Is that not true? Is that not true? Hidden in plain sight. Here we go. Psalm 22:18. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. They cast the lots. They look at my chart and see who am I. And they determine who I am based on my chart. Is that not how it works? All right. Let's keep going. Um all right. So basically, so we can see how this is um you know wait a minute. Look at this Proverbs 16 verse 33. The lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing is thereof is the Lord. So the lot, meaning you sit down and write this on your lap while you're doing the calculations. But the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord, meaning the one who gave you the lot is from the Lord. The one who gave you the knowledge, gave you the charts, gave you the points, gave you your life, that comes from the Most High. But you sit, with your pen and paper in your lap trying to figure out what your lots are. But they came from the most high. So, all right, so this is my lot of fortune, lot of spirit, and lot of arrows. Now, like I mentioned, I don't have no love in my chart. This is where my love is. Lot of arrows is in Libra, which is the house of Venus. So I do have love in my chart. It's just not on my regular chart. You have to look for this detailed information to find where my point of love is. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit of detail. I'm not going to go into this too much except for um, so this is why they have the houses listed, right? So the second house, the 10th house, and the 12th house. All right, so let's look at the angels for these. Now, like I said, these are mine. So we have the lot of fortune. Um, my lot of fortune is in Sagittarius at 24 degrees. And here's the chart. This is what it looks like. My lot of fortune is at 24 degrees of Sagittarius, and that intelligence, um, you can see it on the screen at 24 degrees. This spirit intelligence reveals to the spiritual light the mysteries of the magical equilibrium of the body, soul, and spirit in their relation to the Akasha principle. He also explains to the spiritual light what genuine introspection is, how important it is for the achievement of magic equilibrium, and that without introspection on a physical, psychic, and spiritual training, a true recognition of the universal truth is impossible. Now, this is my lot of fortune, and the reason, and I could talk about this very, very personally because um, I have always been a thinker. So when I go to solve a problem, I have to basically go into meditation with the question, the problem that I'm trying to solve. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus. And I first realized that I actually had a system for doing this when my grandmother died. It was a lot of stuff that had to be resolved that nobody had any answers to, and I basically went into a meditation for like 3 days until the answers came, and we just went with every single answer that I was given. Nobody argued. It was no discussion, no issues, no nothing, and everything was just perfect. Like I couldn't have done it more perfect in that. And that's because my lot of fortune is this spirit intelligence, which will come to me when I go into this meditative state. And so now when I have problems, I do go into a meditative state, looking for the solutions, so through, I guess, a mental wandering of sorts until, you know, all the keys lock all together. So whenever I have a serious issue, you know, it's my fortunate part to go into this meditation. And again, this is why you have me when stuff happens. I'm still kind of like, you know, I'm just maintaining because I know that what's the worst thing for me, whatever the opposite of this guy is, that's the worst thing I could possibly do. And so what I try and do is not just don't get into that vibration. I look at stuff, I give myself an amount of time to mourn, whatever, and then and then I move on because that's the way that I deal with things. That's the information the spirit gave me a long time ago, right after I turned 22, I guess, about how to deal with this kind of stuff. Before I had a very difficult time dealing with stuff, and now, I mean, basically, stuff comes, stuff goes. I put it into the spirit realm. Look, y'all gonna have to resolve this, and then I move on, and that's why I'm now starting to see so many different things manifest that I never thought would be able to manifest. Because, I mean, look at this. So this is for me. And then my lot of spirit is at 10 degrees of Virgo, which I have a lot of stuff in Virgo. I have a lot of stuff in Virgo. These are backwards. So that's why you'll see. And 10 degrees of Virgo, you see the name there. And it says this spirit intelligence is an excellent initiator into alchemical secrets and entrusts a spiritual light with methods by which it can achieve diverse facilities and powers by the application of appropriate alchemical means. This intelligence reveals to the spiritual light how to produce alchemical love medicines, incense, magic ointments, oils for exteriorization, and other mediumistic purposes. Apart from this, this spirit intelligence helps with the charging and impregnation of alchemical means, either personally or by his subordinates. So, this is absolutely true in my case. I my very first business that I started, I made lotions, soap, body butters, and oils. And I came up with the recipes for them through some, I guess, research slash meditation. Because with me, research is meditation. When I get up and start looking at stuff, it's like the words jump off the page. So research slash meditation, I came up with these, these different essential oil blends that I use to scent my that I use to scent my oils and my soaps and stuff. And it was a very personal blend. All the blends were very personal to me. And I sold that along with my jewelry and some other stuff, and that was my very first business. And as I have mentioned before, I stopped that business because I was concerned about the implications of being sued, because everybody at that time was really like, especially black folks was suing everybody, every creator who made some oil, soap, something like that, they was all like suing these people. And now I notice that they're not doing that so much anymore. I may go back into my oils, but just in a different way. So this whole intelligence, and another thing, the achievement of diverse faculties, this intelligence would have been the one that had me make the pendulums, because I didn't buy my first pendulum. I made my first pendulum. You know, and so I understand now why I'm the only one doing these types of things with the pendulums and the xenon bulbs and the magnetic, electric, all the stuff that goes into them. I understand now why I'm the only one who does that. So that would have been this spirit intelligence, reaching deep into me and giving me this particular skill, and that's my lot of spirit. So making these kind of things, these kind of oils, that's the and the lot of spirit comes from the Father. That's what the Father gave me, and a lot of fortune comes from the Mother, the Moon. That's what she gave me on the first part, which was what did I say, 24. um you know so even I didn't even know that was the mother working with me, but that's the mother working with me, giving me the answers to these problems, bringing out this information. It don't have nothing to do with me, which I knew it didn't have anything to do with me, because half the time I don't even know what I'm saying. I have to go back and re-listen to the videos. I'm like, dag on it, I said all of that, I don't even remember saying that. So that's the mother, what the mother gave to me, and then the lot of spirit, that's what the Father gave to me. So now we're going to look at my lot of Eros. Now remember I said I have no love. There's no love in my chart. Like literally I have one thing I think in um Taurus, I think, but nothing in Libra at all, like inconspicuously nothing in Libra. And this is in my 12th house, which the 12th house is the house of what did I just say that was? 17 degrees of Libra. All right, so and this is 17 degrees of Libra. Now, this is y'all are gonna find this to be funny, but I'm gonna explain this to you. This also is crazy. This head is the initiator of all intoxicating drinks, from the prime. origin, he has been teaching man by intuition how to make the most diverse kinds of intoxicating drinks. For instance, wine, mead, beer, liquor, etc., which are to put a man in a happy mood and to make him bear his his lot more easily. However, this head must not be mistaken for the contra-genius of this sphere who controls notorious drunkards. All those people who are protected by this spirit intelligence who have to do their production and selling of alcoholic drinks. The spiritualite may get from this head excellent recipes for the production of wine, beer, liquor, and on top of this, certain advice on how these beverages can be ameliorated by various methods. He also reveals to the spiritualite magic recipes and instructions on how, for instance, he can, under the influence of the amalgamation of elements, change water into wine. Furthermore, how he can protect himself successfully against the influence of the alcohol contained by these beverages so that even great quantities of this alcohol will leave him sober. Y'all, y'all are not going to believe this. Sister Colette knows. I make hard lemonade. I make hard cider. I make, you know, wine. I started doing that like in 2017 before lockdown. I started doing that 2018, something like that, because I made vinegar. And then once you start making vinegar, then you're like, okay, let me make some hard cider. So I had given Sister Colette a bottle of because she was telling me about this truth stuff and I wasn't in the truth yet, but I was awake, but I wasn't on this side. And so she was like, man, when people find out the truth, what are they going to do? So I went into my house where I lived in my townhouse and I gave her a bottle of, I think it was raspberry wine or something like that. I said, just hold on to this. You're going to need it. Oh my gosh. When I read this, I thought of that story exactly. I said, hold on to this. You're going to need this. What they're going to have to do is just get them really something strong to drink and then they'll be fine. So I actually make hard cider, hard lemonade, um and wine and stuff. Additionally, outside of that, I worked in the restaurant industry. I worked at a restaurant for 5 years. And I've told parts of this story, but I'll just tell you this part. One thing I found out when I was working at that restaurant is what rich people drink, rich black people drink. Okay. And so I found out how to drink so that you really don't get drunk because my boss, she drunk all the time. Like she drunk all the time and I would drink too and I would get sort of like drunk but not super drunk. And the only time when I really got super drunk was when I mixed too much stuff. But I always been the type of person who when I drank, I would never drink too much. For one. For two, when I drank, I would I had a limit. So even if I could clearly see everybody still drinking or whatever the case may be, I never drank as much as everybody else. I always stopped and I was like, you know what, I think I'm done, I've had enough. Or I would slow walk my drink or I knew how to put food on my I just automatically had a system for making sure that when I drunk stuff I didn't get drunk because I didn't want to have that feeling of being drunk. And the only time I did get drunk is when I drank cheap stuff. And I think it's probably this spirit intelligence. My friend and I one time we went to a bar and we actually got drugged, but we split a drink. So I can see that this spirit intelligence allowed us to, instead of having two whole drinks and really not making it home, we were still able to make it home. It was a long trip, and I was very, very sick afterwards. And we didn't realize until like a few years ago that we had probably been drugged. And this happened like maybe almost like 14 years ago. And so, this spirit intelligence, whether I know it or not, has been like with me like all along. And so like another thing that I do is I make a lot of like specialty drinks. I would make like homemade lemonade. I have a recipe where I made sorrel lemonade that my kids would drink, and all kinds of like specialty drinks, and my own uh extractions. I made my own vanilla, homemade vanilla. I make my own like tinctures and stuff with alcohol. So I've done a lot of stuff, like even mixing drinks because I was a bartender. So a lot of times I would bartend events, and so I did a lot of weddings and stuff, and so that spirit was right with me during all of that, and I got a lot of knowledge doing those type of events and getting into that industry and stuff like that. So the whole thing is like I say I don't have no love in my chart, and I do have love. My love is for drinks. But it's true though. I do not drinking, but I do love making drinks for people. Seeing people happy, looking at how they are, and telling them, look, I think you need this drink, you should try this one, coming up with different drink combinations. Like I could talk about drinks all day and all night, like, especially what the alcohols can do, what they taste like, different kinds of stuff, talking about the wines, and not from an academic point of view, but from like a spiritual emotional point of view and stuff like that. Like not all that, oh, it has this fruity taste and it's got this whatever, how the connoisseurs are. I'm not that kind of person. I'm more like, oh, what do you like? Oh, you like this? Okay. Then I go through my Rolodex of drinks that I've had and say, okay, well, you might want to try this, you might want to try that. And there's some drinks that I absolutely dislike, which is like amaretto, anything with amaretto in it. I don't really like coconut either. I don't like coconut anything. And so it's like, wow, all of this stuff, all this influence is from this head. And so I could tell when I was leaning a little bit to the contra intelligence, when at the restaurant we were just drinking too much and leaning towards that side, and this guy would be like, no, 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 you're going a little bit too far. I'll come back on this side. So this is actually like really emotional for me because I cannot believe that this whole time, like I always say, man, I don't have no love in my chart, but I do have love in my chart. My love is for alcohol. So anyway, that's how the Most High is actually hilarious with some of this stuff. So um anyway, I hope that this information is helpful, useful to somebody. We have a lot of lots. The most high, if we cast our lots in this life, we will see how how much um how fortunate we are, with just having access to this knowledge. And once it's encoded in the ley line, there's nothing that they can do. So again, I'm gonna put the links to the websites that you can go and check your lots out in the chart, in the description. And if anybody wants, like a reading from me, you can go to my website, fruitsandspirit.com, or send me an email. People who send me an email typically gonna get a different price. As long as you're not a Gentile, Gentiles always pay full price over here. No offense, but that's what the spirits say to do. Um, and so, to the spirits who are here with us, you're invited to go in peace. To my beloved viewers, you're invited to be at peace. And always remember, the Most High is your peace. Shalom.